This is the story of the uprising of a group of enslaved and Khoisan laborers on farms in the Koue Bokkeveld. The uprising in question happened in 1825 and is one of two significant uprisings that occurred in the Cape Colony during British rule. The enslaved and Khoisan laborers worked on several farms in the valley below the Skurweberg. The group of rebels was led by an enslaved man called Khoisan. His second in command was Abel, an enslaved man from a neighboring farm. They were joined by 5 other enslaved laborers, Klaas, Achilles, Antoni, Adonis, and Pamela, and 5 Khoisan laborers, Isaac Thees, Isaac Roy, Hendrik Valentijn, and Vlak. On the evening of the 1st of February 1825, Abel secretly made his way from Rietrivier, where he lived with his master, to Houdenbeck, Willem van der Merwe's farm. When he got there, he met up with Khoisan, Isaac Thees, Isaac Roy, and Hendrik, who were ready and waiting for him. The group of rebels left Houdenbeck on horses and rode back to Rietrivier. Once they arrived, they rushed into the house of Barend van der Merwe, who had gone outside to catch some sheep that had escaped from his kraal. They seized 2 guns as well as ammunition. The rebels fired shots at Barend, who ran away from them into the house and then out the back door, having been wounded in the foot. Barend's wife escaped with her children, as well as Goliath, an enslaved man. The rebels traveled from Barend's farm back to Houdenbeck, now also with the enslaved man Klaas. They arrived at Houdenbeck in the middle of the night and went to Khoisan's hut, at this point joined by Achilles, Antoni, Valentijn, and Vlak. The next morning, the rebels hid outside the farmhouse waiting. When Willem and his neighbor Hannes left to start the morning's work, Khoisan, Abel, Isaac Thees, and Klaas entered the farmhouse to steal the family's shotguns. They were caught by Willem's wife, Elsie, who wrestled with Abel and Khoisan and was shot in the upper left thigh in the process. The rest of the group stayed outside to guard the house. The rebels left the house with the guns and divided these and other weapons amongst themselves. At the same time, Willem and Hannes rushed back to the house, but were fired at by the rebels. As the rebels tried to break into the front of the house, Hannes fled out the back. The rebels spotted him and chased him down. Willem attempted to negotiate with the rebels, but they weren't interested in talking. Khoisan shot and killed Willem when he opened the front door to speak to them. Now clearly besieged, Elsie and Hannes took cover with the household's other visitor, the schoolmaster Verleer, his wife Martha, and their baby. Hannes and Verleer fled to the kitchen along with Elsie, who attempted to hide inside the oven. Martha, all the children, and the women servants and enslaved laborers of the house hid in the loft. The rebels tried to break open the oven and fired shots at it from outside until Elsie fell out of the oven, covered in dust and soot. As Hannes attempted to help Elsie to her feet, the rebels broke into the house through the kitchen door. Hannes pleaded with the rebels, hoping they would spare his life. The court documents aim that Abel responded, quote, that no Christian should have pardon, for that the report had been that the slaves were to have been free at the new year, but that it was not having been done, they would make themselves free, end quote. After this, he shot Hannes in the chest, killing him immediately. The rebels moved further into the house, where Abel shot Verleer, who fell to the ground and appeared to be dead. They searched the house and found 2 pistols and more ammunition. Then they realized that Verleer was not in fact dead. Abel shot Verleer in the head. He continued to make noises, and so was shot in the chest by Isaac Roy. There is debate in the court documents as to whether or not Roy did it because he was being threatened by Khoisan. At this point, Elsie had tried to hide under a table, but had then moved to the loft where the children and the other women were sheltering. The rebels debated over how to treat the women and children, some perhaps more keen to hurt them than others. The female Khoisan and enslaved servants begged for the women and children to be spared and managed to save them from harm. Khoisan, Abel, Isaac Roy, Isaac Thees, Hendrik and Klaas left the farm, leaving behind Valentijn, Vlak, Achilles, Antoni, and one of the enslaved women, Pamela, who was later named by the authorities as a member of their group of rebels. Elsie's wounds were treated by the remaining servants, although it is unclear who, as Pamela's involvement is disputed in the court documents. At some point, Pamela, Valentijn, and Vlak fled into the mountains, as Khoisan had instructed them, whilst Achilles and Antony remained at the farmhouse with Elsie. Whilst events unfolded at Hodenbeck, Barend rode to Santrivier, the farm of Jan Dalrier, where he raised the alarm. A visitor at Santrivier, William Pearson, then rode to the Veldkornet and reported on the events. The Veldkornet dispatched a commando to apprehend the rebels. The last of the group of rebels, Galant, Abel, Isaac Roy, Isaac Theys, Hendrik and Klaas, rode to Santrivier, then to Ritrivier, Barend's farm, and finally to a grazing post belonging to Piet van der Merwe, where the group encountered the commander. Hendrik and Klaas were captured there, whilst the rest fled into the mountains. Eventually all the rebels were captured and taken to Cape Town, where they were tried for the crimes committed during their uprising. An enslaved man named Adonis was tried alongside them for allegedly providing the molds used to make ammunition, as well as a free man named Petrus Josephus Kamfer, who was thought to have helped the rebels form their plan.